Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Freshly Brewed podcast. I'd like to say, first off, thanks for the positive reception on my last video. It's nice to see people were enjoying the podcast so far, and there were some real good comments as well on some certain topics I might be talking about in future episodes, so I'd like to thank you guys for the feedback in the comments as well. But for this episode, this is something that sort of crossed my mind today from my own experience and made me think a little bit more in depth about it, and that is cost versus worth. Is an $80 shirt worth $80? Are $200 shoes worth $200? And what factors go into cost and in turn worth? How does reselling expound that question, and what really makes a piece worth it? So what made me start thinking about this age-old question was I was looking for some new t-shirts. I've got way too many sweatshirts, so no need to look for those when it's actually winter. And I found one I was interested in, a Maharishi tee, the Fuji tee, I believe, on their website and a couple of the retail sites for around $80. And that got me thinking, what makes this $80 shirt worth it to me? What appeals to me about it? What makes that cost balance out for me in terms of worth? You know, real philosophical stuff here. So breaking it down with any piece of clothing, the first major thing is the material. What your shirt, sweatshirt, shoes, or whatever are made out of is certainly the key determining factor when it comes to cost. Shirts that are cut and sewed, made out of things like pure cotton and made in non-mass production sweatshops are all going to affect that baseline cost, and which is certainly going to be higher than your average shirt cost. For example, this Maharishi tee, it's organic cotton, ribbed on the collar and waist, and it's made in Portugal. So that's much different than a Gildan tee made out of a combination of materials produced in a sweatshop somewhere in Asia like Vietnam or China. So of course, it makes sense that a brand is going to charge more to make up for the added initial cost from the materials. Basic economics right there. But while quality plays a major part for the cost, so does the brand recognition and status. That's how brands such as Antisocial Social Club can print their shirts on Gildan blanks, but they still charge higher, more premium level prices for their clothes. If a brand has a ton of hype, recognition, and status, then that compounds the amount of money the brand can charge for their stuff and still have people buy it. And going in hand with this is the type of design or style being applied to the respective piece of clothing, as well as the quantity of it. A basic pocket tee, which is probably easier and cheaper to make than a graphic tee or a pair of shoes in a simple colorway rather than some in a more complex color scheme with accents like 3M, they're going to be priced at much different ratios. And of course, items that are more unique with designs, they're one-off collaborations, or if they have limited runs, they're going to cost more than the general releases due to that rarity and unique factor. But I would say there's no real dominant factor when it comes to initial cost. The materials might set the baseline, but again, brands like Antisocial Social Club have shown that you can make up for a more lackluster material quality if your status is high enough. The main thing really is that all those factors work together to create that initial price point for a piece. So now that we've laid out the stuff for cost, let's talk about worth. Pretty much all the cost factors can be reinterpreted when it comes to worth, as well as a couple different ones as well that are unique to the worth side of the equation. If an item is made with better materials and in a better way, then of course it's going to be worth more in the eyes of a consumer. And the same goes with brand status. Maybe you don't really care for how or what your clothes are made out of, but the fact that it's made by so-and-so brand that you've seen on your favorite celebrity makes it a bit more worth it to you because of the worth status that's added, that intangible worth status. You know, I think this is kind of why people still will buy, you know, very obviously fake box logos or Yeezys, or, you know, even people who buy very close replicas like on fashion reps. You know, it's about getting that status that comes with the brand and either not wanting to spend the money or not caring about the replica and fake clothing being less quality. To them, the status is what gives it worth. And that's not me trying to call out anybody who's, you know, into that, fashion reps and stuff like that. I think that's just, again, the major sort of reason why people are into it. It's the lower cost, but the same sort of status recognition. And then with the designs, the appeal of having something that you know is different from most of what everyone else has can really make that worth shoot up quite a bit. Ties into the status of brands as well. Certain designs are of course synonymous with brands, like the box logo for Supreme, the Palace Triferg, the patterns for Yeezys, just to kind of name some examples. But the idea of having a piece that has a design or style that you can't see at any other store any other brand, and that might never show up again due to a limited quantity run, and the sort of one and done style drops that we see nowadays can push people to seeing those more expensive exclusives as worthwhile to buy. But, with worth, like I mentioned, there's a couple other factors that don't really go into the normal cost side of the equation, and that's sort of the usability and sentimental emotional attachment that an item can have. When you're looking at a piece, on top of all the other factors, you're also going to be thinking, well, am I going to get use out of this item? Am I going to be wearing it a lot? Am I only going to be wearing it at certain times? Questions like that. And depending on how much you perceive yourself getting out of a piece, that can really make or break a purchase. If you don't think you're going to be able to wear or use a piece a lot, then odds are you're probably not going to buy it, even if it meets those other criteria for you. And of course, with the emotional, sentimental attachments, if an item is referencing maybe a movie that you like, or if it's in reference to a celebrity you grew up idolizing, or maybe that someone in your family has, some sort of connection to. If there's some sort of emotional attachment that obviously isn't going to be considered with the initial sort of cost side of things, that can also make an item appeal a bit more to you if it's got sort of a reference or a connection to something that you also think you have a connection to. However, that look at worth is with the pretext of the standard retail costs being applied. When it comes to resell and the prices being 2, 3, or even 4 or 5 times the amount of the standard retail price, well then how does that shape the cost-worth relationship? See, the thing with resell is that the normal factors that went into cost stay the same while the price becomes incredibly more and more, and in turn, the cost-worth balance becomes a whole lot harder to balance out. Paying $42 for a Supreme or Palace shirt might not be too bad, but when it comes to an $80 or $90 shirt, well then what do you do? Do the materials still hold up as being worth that newfound amount? And that gets even more intense with more hyped items like, the Bread Jordan 1s or box logo tees. Are those $160 shoes and $42 tees? Does their quality still hold up when they're worth potentially $300 to $700 on the resale market? This is the first area where, when it comes to determining, the resale worth, I think it's going to be the biggest determining factor for a lot of people, at face value. The quality of what you're getting at retail might be fine, but when it comes to paying so much more, then you'd hope that whatever you're buying has some sort of real lasting quality, which honestly not too many pieces have. Yes, they're going to be made out of better materials and stuff at, say, Old Navy or Target and stuff like that, but after a few years of wear and use, a lot of tees and shoes are going to start to show their wear, and unless that's a look you're either trying to go for or, you don't really mind. Like, I know for myself, for example, I don't mind when my pieces start to show some, minor wear and usage. I kind of like that aspect about them. It shows that I'm actually, someone who wears the clothing that they buy. But if you're not into that, then, is it really going to be worth it to start buying these pieces at these price points? But then status comes into play as well, right? Is the status that supposedly comes with having a pair of Yeezys or having a Supreme hoodie, is it worth paying so much money for them? I think people see social media celebrities flexing on Instagram, or idiots like Rice Gum who will show off their insane resale purchases and will, try and flex, quote unquote, with their celebrity status, quote unquote, putting that all in quotations, because if you think people like Rice Gum are celebrities, you need to get your head checked. But they'll see that and then they'll say, oh, well, it is worth it to pay this much for this item, because think of all the status that comes with wearing that item now. People are going to think you have so much money. People are going to think that, you're so cool. Of course, it's now worth it to pay that price point. In reality, the perceived status an item has is exactly that. It's perceived. Much like beauty is in the eye of the beholder, so is status. You may think you have so much clout because you have Yeezys, but in actuality, does that perceived status justify your resale purchase? Not everyone else is going to see a pair of Yeezys in the same way you do. Some might, but others may think you're wasting your money. Others may think they look ugly. The whole thing is you're going with your own perceived status value, when you also have to think, does that really hold up in the grand scheme of things? Then talking about designs. If you know a piece is unique, one drop only exclusive, does that make it more understandable to pay for resale if you know this item isn't coming back? For me, this and the factor I'll be talking about next are kind of the biggest ones. If I see a piece with a unique design or a style that I know won't be coming back, it definitely can make some of the prices seem a bit more worth it for me. I also will tie this in with the sort of sentimental aspect that I talked about before. If I see a piece that I know has some kind of significance to me, or I can sort of feel some sort of connection to, which sounds weird, but if there's a tee that's referencing a movie that has some importance to me or someone in my family, then, maybe I'm going to be a bit more interested in buying that. But the other sort of factor that also holds a lot of weight for me is practicality and usability. With retail costs, it might be a little easier to justify paying for something that maybe you're not going to wear as much or not use all too often. But when the resale prices are applied, I want to make sure that I am going to use this item as much as possible in order to justify that price point for me. I've seen plenty of nice jackets and sweatshirts that appeal to me, that are unique, that aren't going to be coming out again. But I also know I live in the South. Sweatshirts have a very short window of usability down here. I can't justify paying some of those prices when I know I'm not going to get as much use out of that item as I could. So then why am I going to throw the money down on that when I could buy other items I will get use out of? Resale just makes all those factors for worth just get shot up to the most extreme level of trying to balance it out. And if anything, it's a real good way to actually put what you buy into perspective, because going into what makes an item worth it, I think it's just having a good combination of all the factors of worth apply to a piece that you're interested in. If the quality is good for the price, if you like the brand and what it represents when worn, if the design or style is unique and appealing to you, and you know you're going to get use out of it, and this is a little unspoken one, but obviously if you can buy it and not go broke, then I think that can make a piece worth it. But with resale becoming more and more lucrative and popular, with a lot more people trying to get into it for a lot of different brands, I think this cost worth question is really going to be stretched to its limits soon. And eventually, I think it might lead to a lot of people potentially giving up on buying resale altogether. If prices continue to go higher and higher, if items continue to get sold out quicker and quicker, and people don't want to pay these new higher prices, people might just, give up on resale entirely. And what that could potentially mean for sort of the resale market and the future of, sort of buying some brands, it's interesting to think about. Not really sure, what could potentially happen with that, but I do think that is eventually a threshold that is going to be crossed sooner rather than later. But anyways, that is going to be it for me. Let me know in the comments what you guys thought of this video and what makes an item worth it to you. Is it similar to what I believe, or is it something I didn't even mention at all? I'd love to hear what you guys think, but that's it for me. I'll catch you all next time.